is an update video of what I've been doing so far since you last seen me. I made a video, if you could click it up there, of the editing list, a big, huge, gargantuan list of things to look out for when you are revising or editing your work. This was created by an editor, and I talked about it more or less in detail in my video, but that was before I really hit full swing in my latest revision of my work, and I've learned some things about that list and what better strategies to use for revising my work. As you may know, I have been working on the Doppelganger Queen, and this is what I've been doing these past 6 months. Well, even in widescreen, there's just not enough room to showcase this freaking huge thing. It is, I want to say, well over 300 pages. I want to say it was 360. After my latest revision, it went up to 386, but the word count had dropped since this current word count. Never mind, I lied. That didn't make sense. The word count went up just a little bit, but not as high as I thought it would be. But yeah, that was 360 pages and almost 100,000 words worth of note-taking I have to do. The number one thing I highly recommend to do is printing out the entire manuscript. You probably won't have a huge thick binder like this. This is I want to say, 1/2 inch or 2-inch binder, just so I have enough room to move things around. One of the benefits of having this big of a binder or having it out behind the computer screen is so that way you can see all of the sections you created in your book. I created roughly 8 sections in my book. Kind of helped me organize where my plot points are and how to do my pacing. And I noted that at the very end, the last 2 sections, I need to take out a whole lot of content, about a good 20 pages or so. And I had to put in almost 10-15 pages worth of content into the last half of the middle, where you go beyond the midpoint, but before you hit the ultimate third act. I have been working on that point. I was able to finalize which chapters I want them to be in, which order they should be, what content they should have. It's kind of nice to know where I have to put my chapters and finalize them before I send it off to the publishers. I determined that a couple of chapters had to be switched just for continuing on the narrative and not let it break. Near the very end, I switched around a lot of scenes, and I have to create a new scene at the end. And I did a lot of shuffling around under certain chapters, and I actually deleted a chapter because of this moving around at the very end of the book. So even though this revision, I don't really need to move the chapters around, I just want to make sure I have everything told the way I want it to be told before I send it off to the lit agents and thus the publishers. I want to make sure I have everything on there before we start, picking and choosing and recreating things again. So printing it out gives me that nice new perspective, this objective look upon my book. I was able to see chapters and sections, and at the same time I compare them as I flip around. It's really hard to do that on a little computer screen. On this little computer screen is this much space, and that's not even a full page. That's a page, probably 3/4 of a page on this little tiny computer screen. This is my work laptop. So I am not able to compare large swaths of text side by side in this manner. And I don't know why I was putting it off for such a long time. I guess I was trying to conserve paper and conserve money, but it's a necessary evil for being an author. I have to do this step. I have to take such a step back, and I was able to see some of the obvious problems that I would never seen until it goes on the editing table, and I would be very caught off guard and very surprised. So I'm glad I took care of it now and have it all set up. Another nice thing about paper is writing in notes and writing in stickies. As you could tell, you probably see a little bit of the pink here, a little bit of the pink here, and that's probably all the pink that you're probably going to see from here. As you can see, some of the pink stuff are my notes. Like, sometimes I put it on the back side of the page. I will make a big, huge highlighting note here and write what I wanted to do. And sometimes I'll put notes on the side. Let me try to find. Sometimes I would do this, where I have some sticky notes on the side here while I'm showing case some text here for my editing. This kind of helps me clear up the desktop space I will be doing when putting down some editorial notes. And I could pick and choose what I wanted to do, such as a conversation dialogue that I never thought of before that I want to insert in that scene. And I will write it out on that side of that paper without interfering with the text that's going on here. And all I have to do is this asterisk and just point. On the computer screen, unless you have something like Scrivener, there we go, that's the word, Scrivener. Unless you have something like that, I will be putting a lot of sticky notes on the desktop and just try my best to type away at the Word document as I go through line by line. And that's not exactly the most efficient way of doing things. So it gave me a lot more freedom of putting my ideas down, putting my thoughts and what I wanted to do. And because of such a distance back and such an objective viewpoint on my work, I was able to become a reader again of my work and create some new ideas and new expectations while finding some of the issues in my work. Most of the time it's just rewording. Other times it's just slicing down some dialogue where it's more manageable and just speed things along. I noticed that I had some lengthy dialogue that's just not, sufficient. Like I could make it more succinct before we move on the action. Some books that may work out, but in a fantasy adventure, it's very close to a thriller where you want some things to just move on and get going, but not that quick. So I have to cut some things up. So that's the major number one thing, is print it out, read it. That's probably the second step, is just to read it. And after you've read it, go ahead and start making notes. You could read it after a chapter, and then you put in your notes or thoughts. After you read that chapter, you can read the whole thing, and then you can start putting in your notes. For me, I put in notes as I was reading, as if I was doing someone else's homework. Let me back up here. What? She does cheating for people? No. You know, in class where you swap each other's papers and you grade each other's work. I took that type of approach with that paper editing phase. I think of it as, if I was the editor or if I'm the reader, what are my expectations and is it meeting it? And I will put down solutions if I could. If I couldn't find the solutions to that problem I'm seeing, I'll just say, clean this up, or just fix this, or this thing needs to be shorter, make it more succinct, and etc. Sometimes I will take a big huge line across the entire page and I will put down, we're doing a new scene here, we're not going to do this. So even after after even 6 drafts of this book, I'm still tearing this apart and putting it back together again. This whole editing experience happens interesting creative decisions that I never thought I would be making until much later. And I'm making it now just so it could be closer to that publishing mark that they want it to be. Now, how long does this paper thing takes? For me, working full time during the summer doing this thing, I barely had enough time in the day to do what I need to do. I wasn't able to take it with me to work during lunchtime because it's just a huge, bulky, colossal thing. It would not even fit in my locker. I could find a good tote bag to carry it and lug it with me, but it is cumbersome, and I wasn't able to take it to work and be able to do it every day. So it took longer than I would expect it to be. It took me a good, probably another 5 months. But it's hardly any type of work during the day. I try to do it in the morning before I rush into work, and I try to do it on my days off, which is very typical in any sort of author's lifestyle. If you are beginning and you have work and you have family, you take as much time as you can get in your life to work on this. So this is the most realistic timeline I probably could give of doing this process. If you have a 360-page manuscript that you're editing, or roughly 100,000 words. Speaking of word count, a bonus editing tip. When you are doing a sci-fi or fantasy, you are going to be the high end of the word count scale. I think the maximum for a debut is 120,000. I could be mistaken, but none of the editors expect you to be an 80 or 90,000. It would be nice, it would be good. Most of the books are going to be around that range, but they understand if you're not able to keep it to that size. It's more understandable. What they will care about is the quality of the work and your storytelling techniques more than anything. So going back on the editing track, after all the 5 months of labor of hitting in notes and making these really hard decisions and ripping things apart and pitting down ideas, the next step is trying to translate it to the laptop. The first thing I did was not grammar, but removing some of the scenes I don't want in there anymore. I went through the entire book and figured out which scenes are going to be deleted. And this is where I wish I had streaming capabilities. I wish I could be able to show you on the text how I was able to remove it and showcase, the minutia details of all that method. But try to imagine going to the computer in the Word document X. Go ahead and highlight that text and hit delete. You will see a merge of the two paragraphs meeting together at both ends. And then there will be a space in between, a line. In that line, I suggest doing either a highlight or an asterisk or something to make it stand out. That way, when you go through the whole finesse of going through each line and making sure everything sounds perfect or unique, you will see that and you will know that you will have to merge between the two passages somehow. Sometimes I use that space to insert a new scene, and that will be a good marker for me to see, oh, this is that area where I have to put in a new scene. I will put it in brackets and write down what I was expecting to do and just leave it at that, and then I'll move on. So this is a cutting stage where I delete some scenes and then I start planning where I'm going to put the new scenes in and then start making my little markers. Then I take the time to type up the new scenes and start merging or creating my transitions from the areas where I cut. This whole phase probably took me about a good month, I want to say. I could be wrong. Maybe it felt like a month doing this phase. Because on one hand, I'm creating something new. On the other hand, I am trying to make sure I'm not cutting out some stuff that I don't want to, cut out. It's a little bit tedious and it's extremely creative. I'm creating something new out of the blue, sort of. In the meantime, I'm trying to make sure that everything just flows from there. I'm flowing into the new scene and flowing out of it and flowing from one passage to another where I had cut it. I'm trying to make sure it's all pretty smooth. No different than spackling over a hole that you put in the wall and then sanding it down before you put paint on it. That's kind of that whole phase. Then I put the translation notes on the page. And this is where this kind of came in handy. I use these notes, list, whatever, that I mentioned in that video as kind of a guideline of what I should be looking out for when I was reading. But for the most part, just taking it as a reader that had high expectations, I was able to put down what I felt was lacking. And whatever I liked, I didn't comment. I just left it alone. This kind of helped me categorize what I need to work on, whether it's plot or character or it's POV. So the first thing I have to worry about was pacing. the plot aspect. And I took care of that for the most part with the deletion and the addition of scenes. I did that already with that. And the next stage for me was making sure my side characters were getting the proper arcs that they need to be. I noticed that a couple of my characters were having their stories told, and they were being sacrificed for the sake of space. And I felt that I'm just going to sacrifice the word count a little bit just so I can have their stories told. I just want to make sure it's out there and on the paper so that way we could discuss whether we need to tell that section of that story or not, and just make it known. So I reinserted some of those scenes, and I put them in there and made sure that it is present, and I enhanced them throughout the book, and making sure that they are staying within character, they're doing things that they are expected to do, that they are growing and transitioning from one point to another, and enhancing their personality, their capabilities, what they can and can't do. I was able to do that with my main characters, but I wasn't able to do that with the side characters. So I want to make sure that that was there. And if you want to know more about character arcs, I suggest looking at this video here. It's kind of the same principle compared to main characters, except the side characters have a little bit of a smaller growth spurt than the main character. I don't mind making that type of video. If you want me to do that type of video, let me know below about comparing a main character and side character arcs. I really don't see that much of a difference, but I could go into the little details about it if you want me to. So, after taking care of characters and making sure the plots are arcing the way they should be, I went into more of the scene by scene notes, making sure the point of view is accurate, making sure I am hooking, I am ending things right, and it's not just the general book beginning and end. Those are really important areas, but I'm talking about my acts, or my acts beginning and ending the way I want it to be, or my chapters beginning and end acting the way I want them to be. Can I do better on my transitions? Can I go from one passage to another? Is that the way I like it, going from A to B? So stuff like that. And then I was able to get into more of the technical stuff, like sentence structure and some of the weird dialogue choices I've been making, and trying to make sure everything is all succinct, and any sort of nitty-gritty stuff. So after taking care of the characters' personalities, I just start going by the notes in the book. I did it by chapter, page by page, and translating those notes to the book after the deleting an additional scene stage probably took another good 2 months. I didn't finish it until almost a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I was able to complete doing the whole stage of putting the notes in, and I started this whole method back in May, so it sounds about right. It took a while for me to translate all the notes on there, but it would have been longer if I had not took the time to put everything on paper. After putting all the notes down and all the little scene edits, the dialogue edits, all of the new additional scenes, etc., I then start looking at polishing the text itself, and this is where I am now. So this is how I've been polishing my books so far. This is a writing style book by a copy chief editor of Random House. This is by Benjamin Dreyer. It's called Dreyer's English. Not that I'm expecting my book to be in Random House by any means. I just want to give that extra oomph that I needed to do. Of course, those who doesn't like to conform by society are probably screaming right now, but hear me out. You have to translate your work for the viewing audience. Part of that translation is making sure a search engine format is in order. And that audience right now could be just your editor. And your editor has to understand what you put down on paper. If they're a really good editor, they're going to notice and they're going to help you on your mistakes, whether or not you confuse the hell out of them. For me, I needed a writing style so I could know how I could translate myself to what they're saying. This is also harkening back to the feedback I received from the lit agents where I need that extra polish. So I'm doing that. And this is also coming from a background of just doing biology reports and making sure I had everything up to top spec. Your normal double space, maybe it was double space. I think I had a different type of spacing set back then, but I have to make sure everything is Times New Roman, everything is 12 font. I had to make sure every single source that I mention is cited and have it in a biblo, everything is all in a certain order, and I was trained to be that way, and I have to. Otherwise, I will be accounted for plagiarism. This is how you lose your reputation and your professional degrees, and even though I was going into the veterinary route, this is something you kind of are expected to do in the sciences. This is how they're able to take your work, scrutinize it, and then discuss the minutiae of your findings and able to communicate back and forth with you. There's no real leeway about font size or anything except what the publishers want to do. So this has been helping me kind of translating my work into a proper verbiage, the proper style. He's pretty common sense. He doesn't go over about, oh my god, you have to split every infinitive. You have to make sure that you don't end in a to have or of, none of that nonsense. He's more concerned about proper discourse, such as punctuation, or doing some sort of foreign language phrases like n'est-ce pas, making sure that you are saying that right in the text, and whether it's italicized or not, etc. That way, when it goes to the editors or the any sort of lit agent, they're going to go, okay, I know what you're trying to indicate here. I get what you're saying. I understand your meaning. And we'll be able to communicate on the same page. This is not to say that, all the editors aren't going to go by the standard. Every single publishing house has their own style. This is simply the style that he had created and is keeping track of through the Random House publishing style. And they're a little bit more how should I say it? They kind of cater to the author's needs. They kind of take every single work and kind of go along with it. For instance, in my work, all of my thoughts are italicized. They're not going to fight me on that per se. They're going to work with me because they understand what I'm trying to communicate. That type of communication back and forth. That being said, I have to make sure I have my Oxford commas or my initials and get rid of all the little tiny words that really just don't serve any purpose. Like so much this, you could get rid of the so and much and just have this. Like just as in just right, you could just get rid of that and just have right, etc. So that helped me see what kind of problems and kind of crutches that I have in my work, and that extra polishing has been a really big help. And I do that last. And I know it's kind of debatable whether to work on grammar before or after. If you want to work on the grammar that you have mentioned in your notes, whether it's like, oh, you should put a period here, or you should have a quotations here, etc., you can do that throughout the work. I wouldn't worry about it too much on any scene that you are deleting. But that being said, when you are putting in a new scene, when you are changing dialogue, when you are changing or condensing actions and narrative, when you're creating any sort of new sentence whatsoever, you're going to have to go over it again with a critical eye for grammar and for punctuation and further polishing. It's just going to happen. You're just going to have to go over it again. So just because you did some of the grammar from your old notes down below and you put that in there, any sort of new sentence you put in that book is going to require that other keen eye of, oh, I gotta make sure it's proper with its grammar and punctuation. Otherwise, you're doing yourself a dissatisfaction, or you're doing yourself a disservice for not only yourself, but for your readers. So, I guess I need to recap. For this editing method I've been doing so far, I would print out the whole thing, and I will try to read it as a reader. And it gives me a fresh perspective of where I want things and whether I like what I'm seeing and what all my expectations are and whether it meets up to that standard. And if it doesn't, I make notes. And by having it out on paper, I was able to put the notes on the back side of the paper, whether sticky notes or actual pen. And I could come up with new ideas for what's going on the paper that's just not pleasing me. Then after making the notes, I would try to translate it on the laptop. I would take out some scenes that I don't want, and then I'll create some new scenes that I need to put in. And I will go ahead and put the rest of the notes on there chapter by chapter, page by page. After everything has been moved around, deleted, and expanded. The editing list I have mentioned in the video is a great way to start categorizing some of the notes. If you don't want to go through page by page of your notes that you put in your binder, you could color code it if you want. Like, this is a POV issue, I'm going to color code it here. This is a character arc issue, I'm going to do it in blue. This is a grammar issue, I'm going to do it in green, etc. So you can do it that way, and that way you can go over your work and multiple times, and you can only work one problem at a time, and it will help you not have such a huge headache as you're putting things on your laptop or on your computer. Then after everything has been translated from the notes to your work and you already hit save, go ahead and do a polish over. Even though you already did the grammar from the old notes, go over it again. I recommend taking it step by step. If you have a writing style book of your choice that you're going by, I recommend doing it chapter by chapter. He does a really good job putting certain categories in their own place. For instance, the first chapter is about removing common words that needs to be deleted. The third chapter was about punctuations. So it kind of helped me give a small guideline of what I should be working on as I'm going over my work over and over again. So those are the stages I've been doing on my editing these past 6 months. It's a little bit more, I want to say, user-friendly than what I mentioned on that previous video of that huge editing list. If you want me to create another list of what to look out for, etc., especially when it comes to the smaller bits, let me know down below. If you like this video and want more videos like this, please hit the like button. That will let me know what type of content I should be doing in 2020. And let me know what your thoughts are down below, what you would like to see, what questions you have, etc. And I'll see